My name is Eric Brotman. I'm a CFP, financial advisor, and CEO of BFG Financial Advisors outside of Baltimore, so not far from here. I'm also a giant fan of FinCon. This is my third FinCon, and I'm going to let you in a little secret, which was 2 years ago I came to FinCon19 and didn't know what a podcast was and had no idea what I was doing here. I need to know who is in the room. How many of you are current financial advisors? So most of the room, financial advisors. How many of you are first-timers at FinCon? Same hands, or many of the same hands. Do you all know why you're here? Have you figured it out now in the last 2 days, figured out the buzz of sort of what you want to do? If you went to the main platform yesterday, you heard two incredible things. Well, you heard lots of incredible things. One of them was about authenticity, and one of them was about point of view. Every time I come to one of these, I take something away, and I've already gotten incredible value from that. So how many of you have been on at least one podcast? All right, less hands, but still half the room. How many of you have your own podcast already? Excellent. All right, you guys are going to teach me a few things then, because I'm still a novice at this. But all right, I have a sense of who's in the room. And what I want to start with is this idea, and we heard some of it yesterday, this idea that all of us in this room, if we're financial advisors, we're already authorities. We know our subject, we have our licensure, we have our professional education and designations and all the things to make us authorities on our subject. We know finance better and financial planning and personal finance better than almost anyone we talk to, because that's what we do every day. I contend that that is not a differentiator for us. All of us have that. And so I will suggest to everyone that being an authority on the subject is not only not enough, it's just the fee to enter. You know, once you're in this business, you're an authority. That doesn't change the game at all. So what I will submit is that we should all learn to become influencers. And that's why we're here. In my estimation, the reason to come to FinCon is to meet and to become, meet other influencers and become influencers in our space. And just like our speakers yesterday said, I don't feel any competition in this room with any of you. So I hope we can all share freely and have a dialogue. And if you have questions, please don't wait till the end. Shout them out, it's fine. We're not competition for each other. The clients who choose you will be different than the clients who choose me. There's an incredible shortage of financial advisors in this country and an even bigger shortage of good ones. So the finding clients is not necessarily the issue. It's how do we become influencers and how do we find them in a way that helps us monetize our business in a different way. And so I want to show you the technology I used when I started in this business. And I realize this is going to date me a little, but do any of you remember this? Some of you remember, a lot of you don't. That computer was not my first, but my second computer. The first one had exactly 64K of RAM. Let that percolate a little bit, that the entire computer had less memory than one email today. Honestly, and it did, it got him to the moon. So I started in the business in 1994. We didn't have internet. We didn't have email. We didn't have social media. In some ways, life was so much easier. I sound like something out of 1950, but it's true. So in some ways, life was much easier. In other ways, it was much harder. How do you get in front of people? And so for any of you, anybody been in the business 25 years or longer? Thank you, my people are here. I'm so glad. All right, so you guys remember this. You remember that in order to get in front of people, you had to do seminars, or you had to do, it was all referral based. And you showed up on your first day on the job, and it was write 100 people who you know, write their names down, because we're going to have you call and sell them something, and that's going to make you successful. And if it doesn't, we have clients and you need a job. And that was truly the way the industry worked at that time. And for millennials coming into the business today, or for career changers coming into the business today, it's a much different world. And that should come as no surprise. So a little bit about our firm, so you have some idea of where we come from. I started the practice in 1994 and launched my own firm in 2003. At the time, I had one full and one part-time person. We have grown to the point where we now have 8 financial advisors and 19 full-time people. And our financial advisors, 4 of us, are owners of the firm. And so I will tell you that there are lots of people at this conference trying to monetize their podcasts. Some people in this room might want to focus on monetizing your practice and monetizing your firm. Your firm will be worth more than your podcast in almost every case. So if that's true, rather than saying I'm a podcaster, it's I'm a financial advisor who has a podcast. And that's an important delineation because none of us necessarily want to be the technical experts. There's a few in the room. Thank you for being here. The technical aspects of doing this. And so what we really want is we really want to build an audience and get in front of people. And what we don't want is to change our day job, in most cases. So now we're at a point where the principals of our firm, we've all divided and conquered, and my job is business development, media, PR, and client relations. So I came to FinCon in 2017. Who was in Dallas? All right. I don't know if we met while we were in Dallas, but I'm going to show you an embarrassing picture of me. I know this shouldn't be videotaped probably, so please turn off your phones. But this is what I looked like when I arrived at my first FinCon. That's fortunately it's my good side. I had no idea what I was doing here. I didn't know what a podcast was. I had never listened to one. I had iTunes, but I had loaded my CDs onto it. I really, truly, and I know it sounds absurd, I didn't know what an MP3 was. So when I say I'm a technophobe, in a great deal, I don't touch computers in my office. No one will let me. And they will tell me, you know, I've had IT people tell me that they've never seen anything like what happened to my machine. And it's only mine. And we have 19 computers, and it's just my machine will have we've never seen anything like that before. What did you do? So I truly try not to touch anything. In fact, the fact that I set this up myself, if you see any smoke, run. So this was all I had to contend with at FinCon. This picture is straight out of their website. It's not the Expo Hall, but it is the hallway, and this was actually Orlando, not Dallas. This was Orlando, so some of you were there also. But that's the picture FinCon provided, so I grabbed it. I was in this sea of humanity, and all these people were talking a language I didn't understand. I might as well have been on foreign shores, because people were talking about specs, and they were talking about recording equipment, and they were doing shows and talking about how to get advertising for their podcast, and all these different things. And I was blown away, not only by the incredible talent in the room and energy in the room, but by the willingness to share in the room. And so what I decided was I was going to walk the Expo Hall. And I mean every booth. I talked to people, I didn't even know what they were talking about, but I talked to everyone there. And so the Expo Hall's open for another day or day and a half or whatever it is. For those of you who haven't done it yet, go. Talk to people. They will give you nuggets of information, and you'll meet people. And so for financial advisors, if we don't want to be podcasters for a living, but we want to be financial advisors for a living, it might be better to dedicate some of our budget in our firms for this project than it is to dedicate some of our time and energy to learn how to do it ourselves, technically speaking. And a lot of people here, I have some friends I met, obviously, at FinCon, and last year, one of them recorded an episode of her podcast in the closet so she could have quiet. She literally went into the closet of her hotel room, in the dark closet, and recorded an episode, and I thought, that is not the way I'm going to do this. That is not my plan. So the first thing I did was work the Expo Hall, and I met some amazing people, all of whom are here today. And so I'm going to introduce you to some folks because this allowed me to get started without learning it all. I didn't have to be a rocket scientist to fly to this moon, okay? So the first folks I met, whoops, are these amazing ladies here who are here, Jess and Margie. Thank you for coming. These folks, what they do for a living is they help people like us get guest spots on podcasts or create our own. And I have utilized them now since we met at FinCon19. And before I ever did a podcast, I wanted to be on a few. I wanted to know how they worked. So I was on 24 podcasts the first year as a guest. Some of them were great. Some of them weren't great. I could tell the difference between hosts who knew what they were doing and read up on me and knew what to ask and hosts who were winging it. I knew the difference between, you could tell immediately the difference between production quality and equipment quality and outcomes and professionalism and all the things. And I thought, now I know how these work and I know which ones are better than others. I'm ready to start thinking about doing this myself. So I went up to Providence, Rhode Island to meet with the team. And we did what I refer to as a boot camp. They have another name for it, but that's what it felt like to me. It was a full day of calisthenics in ways I didn't understand. And they helped me create a white paper. Now, they didn't write it. They're not financial experts. They're media experts. I wrote a white paper, and I wanted to find a way to put it out to the public and to have it build our list. And I didn't know how to do any of these things. So built a white paper out on 4 strategies, 4 places where most Americans can put money where it's never taxed again. Simple. And I created a landing page for it, which is at lowtaxbook.com. So if you go to lowtaxbook.com, you will find that. And it's downloadable and it's free. And everyone who downloads it now goes into my constant contact, and that constant contact can spread to my social media, and we have those folks on our LinkedIn platform and all these places. And so now I had this mechanism to capture an audience, which was wonderful. And of course people can opt out, but it's surprising how few do. We don't spam the hell out of them. What we do is instead we'll send a message every 3-4 times a year with some valuable information, and people don't opt out if it's not coming at them constantly. So we've built our audience that way, but now how do we get people to find this website? Well, it's much easier to be a guest on podcasts and to be selected as a guest if you have your own podcast. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but creating a podcast made me a more attractive guest to podcasters. So even if my podcast was heard by 6 people and they were all personally related to me, it was still helpful to say, I have a podcast, this is it, and you can listen to it, so they could get a sample of not only who I am and what I do, but how I sound and how this works. So I thought, okay, that means I'm going to have to put some content out. I have to figure out a way to do this. How do I get this book in other people's hands? So what I decided to do was, when I did my talks on the podcast, instead of saying our website for our company is, and we do financial planning, what I said was, get some information about taxes, because that's what we're talking about anyway, go to lowtaxbook.com. Some of these shows, and I'll show you a sampling of these, which I thought was pretty cool. All of these shows had me on as guests. And they have huge audiences that I don't have. So I was able to go on these shows, and these people put my content and my information out to their huge audiences. So if one of them has 10 or 20 or 50,000 listeners or more, suddenly I'm getting exposure to their audience, which is far riper than mine ever will be. So going on these shows made a difference, and one of them went viral. And that's really all it took. I mean, all of them got me cool opportunities to put things out on social media, and it led folks to things. But one of them went viral, which was very cool. Some of you may have heard of Bigger Pockets Money. It's an amazing show. I don't know if Mindy's here or not, but it's an incredible, incredible show. And they had me on, and it was both audio podcasting and YouTube. So now I'm on camera, and had no idea how many people were going to see this. But when they dropped this episode, and this is the actual title from 4 Ways to Reduce Your Taxable Income, I had more than 4,000 people download my ebook and jump into my constant contact in a week. That doesn't happen. I mean, you're not talking millions of people, but 4,000, it doubled my contact list in a week. And I can trace clients and revenue to this. The ROI in my first year working with Interview Connections was about 400%. I don't know that that's going to happen for everybody. This is not a commercial for them. But the idea was being a guest on these podcasts created an audience for me. And now it creates an audience that I've captured so that I can push out my own podcast to that audience. They've heard of me. We've automated some of the email responses and things I don't understand, but it happens. And I think we got a dozen new clients in the first year from just being a guest on podcasts. I didn't have a podcast at this time. I was a guest. Podcasting and this type of media has now surpassed referrals as our best source of new clients and good clients, and from all over the world. I got a call from China, from somebody who listened to the show and was originally from Philadelphia. Actually, we went to the same college, and he said, we're repatriating to the States, can we talk? He heard my show in China. It was just this, I'm sitting in my office with my own little laptop, doing a little camera show, having a conversation for an hour, and the next thing you know, all these people found it. And it was, truly, it showed the power of media. I have been doing television, Sunday morning news in Baltimore, for 5 years. I have never gotten a client from that. Now that's NBC, It is high profile. People in the bagel place are like, hey, you're that guy, I've seen you. But I have never gotten a client from it. Never once. No one, and the people who call are not the people we would want as clients. The people who have called are saying, I'm thinking about bankruptcy, what do I do? They're the people who pick up the phone like, here's somebody who can help me with bankruptcy. He'll write the check. Which is not what we do, just in case you're... So my point is that traditional media, whether it's print, which died a long time ago, they just haven't had the funeral, or whether it's traditional television, which lots of people watch the Sunday morning news in your local community. Lots of people. They have a huge viewership. It's never created a client. Being a guest on podcasts created a ton of business for us and paid for itself. And so I did make an investment to become a guest. I made an investment in this, but it paid off in droves and continues to, and it's not something that was temporary. It's something I'm going to continue to do because it works. They say if it ain't broke, right? Well, it's working. So that's where we're directing our marketing budget toward the things that actually work. We're not spending any money on TV advertising or traditional radio or print. Sir?
Do you have a certain value proposition you make when you're positioning yourself as a guest?
It's an excellent question. And actually, we have enough content now that our one sheet, I think, is pretty compelling. And what a one sheet is, for those of you who have not done this, is it's the one pager with a little photo, and it's not your professional bio as much as some of the things you can talk about, questions you can answer, topics you can cover. Having one of those is really important. I got mine in Rhode Island because that's where they grow. And now my one sheet helps me get placed on various different shows. And when we have guests on our show, one of the things we ask them for is the one sheet. Send us that, because then I know I can see where they've been. I can listen to some of the things they've been on or their podcast, and it's like we're immediately relatable to each other on the air, which is great. There are plenty of seats if you guys want to sit. You don't have to stand in the back. So the question is there a value proposition? Not directly. Not directly. There almost doesn't have to be, other than they know they're going to get a guest who's not going to stumble over his words and who's going to be a good guest and who's going to help tee their show up, because they know I'm going to do my homework as much as they do. If you're going to be a guest on a show, you better listen to one or two of their episodes at least to know what you're going to be asked. Bigger Pockets, they do a thing at the end of every show that's their 4 questions. It's their thing. On our show, ours is called Don't Retire, Graduate. And at the end of the show, we ask every guest to give an extra credit assignment, because no one likes homework, but everyone does extra credit. And the extra credit is the one takeaway from the show. And for our guests, I tee them up before we go live. I tee them up and say, I'm going to ask you for an extra credit assignment. If they've listened to the show, they were already prepared. If not, they're now scrambling for an extra credit assignment. If you're going to be on a show, be prepared. If you're going to host a show and you're going to have a guest on, be prepared. Know who they are. Know what they're about. Sir? I will typically, with their one sheet, I'll see some of the places they've been. I will look at I will Google them. I will look at their LinkedIn profiles. I will listen to at least 1 or 2 episodes if they have a show of their own or a show they've been on, just so I have a sense. I'm interviewing somebody in a few weeks he's perfect for our audience. He's in his mid-80s, and he teaches people in their 70s and 80s how to make money and how to find jobs and how to do work that's not overwhelming, because nobody, our whole show's premise is retirement is bad for you and no one should do it. Financial independence, good. Retirement, disappearing and being idle, bad. So this whole idea of retirement, I think, is not good for us. So we've changed the conversation about retirement into graduation. So I'm working on a book, and this whole premise is you have a freshman year, a sophomore year, a junior year, and a senior year. Freshman year is you're figuring out some of the things you're going to do when you get out of school, and what's my career going to look like, and what kind of student loans did I take on, and what's my first house look like, and what are the implications of marriage and children, and sort of you go through this, and you get toward the end, and it's estate planning and philanthropy, and it's all the things we talk to our clients about at different stages of their lives. But what it isn't, let me show you how to stop working so you can sit on the couch and watch Oprah and play shuffleboard. Both fine activities, but not necessarily the way you want to spend what could be 35 years. That's boring. So at FinCon19, Fidelity had a booth where they had hired some caricaturists. There's a booth here somewhere doing caricatures. Get one. And get one, and don't make it the kind of thing you stick on your refrigerator for 3 months. Get one with purpose. I knew what the book I was writing was, so this is the caricature that they did for me here at FinCon17. I didn't know why, but I thought a cap and gown would be a good thing. I also didn't know our corporate colors were going to be blue and green. That's been added subsequently. But at the time, the caricature, which does make me look more like Mr. Incredible than I expected, I feel kind of incredible right now. So also a little bit like Ben Roethlisberger, which I don't like as much. But my point is, do a caricature that will tie into something you're doing professionally that you can use that's fun. It's different than just, hey, here's my goofy smile with 3 dimples on the fridge. You know, this was going to become the book or the podcast. I did not know it was going to become the tile for my podcast, but I will show you that in a minute. I didn't even know I was going to do a podcast. All I knew is I was working on a book, and this was what it was about. And so, how do I tie this in? So, if you're bloggers, or if your thing is saving for college, or it's whatever, have your caricature done with a piggy bank. Something, anything that will make yours different than everyone else's. Do something a little bit creative. It costs nothing. You're here. Go do something like that, and you never know how it may come in handy. So I told you about the folks in Rhode Island. Now we've got to go south to Florida. And this is Tracy and Russ. Tracy and Russ actually do all the technical stuff for my podcast because I don't know how to do any of it. I can still program a VHS, though, if anyone needs help with that. What these folks do is they make it possible for me to show up in my own office, record my own podcast, and do nothing else. So now I have folks helping me get guests. I have these folks who helped me figure out what technology do I need, which, by the way, I set up a studio in the office. Now, we went to the lengths of doing some soundproofing and such because the studio is next to the employee lounge, which could create some very interesting accidental feedback. So in fact, when we're doing the recording, we ask people stop lounging. But nonetheless, this was an opportunity to show up, to have the technology, to have the right equipment, to do the show, to have it edited and put out. They set up my website for the show. They set up all the Libsyn accounts and the Soundstripe accounts and all the stuff. I don't want to know how to do that. That's not what I do for a living. I just want to record a show. So Russ is the technical guy behind the scenes, and I'm on the phone with him, and he's the one who talks to our guests, and we set it up with the earphones and the microphones, and it was under $600 for all of the equipment. This is not a $10,000 studio. It's not necessary. I'm not trying to record the next rap hit. I just wanted to have a place where I'd have a little quiet so I could record this. So they helped me tie what was at one point just a caricature into a show. And Don't Retire, Graduate became a thing. And between Jess and Margie and Tracy, this became a thing. And this is me in my sound studio. I did, in fact, buy both a cap and gown to match. Our company colors are the green and the blue, so we went with the green and blue. I do have a cap to match that, but I thought I would do the podcast recording photo for this. I do not wear that when I record the show. To be clear, that is hot and uncomfortable, although I am thinking when the book comes out that doing a speaking tour around it, I will come out in cap and gown, and I will give the talk like it's a commencement speech. That will be different. No one's doing that. Before I came up with the graduation idea, I Googled the heck out of it. I'm thinking 12 financial advisors are doing this. There were 0. If you want to be number 2, you can. Nothing's trademarked. I dare you. No. But this. Find something uniquely you and run with it, right? I mean, this was so now I have this. What I hope will become a thing. I don't know that I'm replacing the FIRE movement because I'm into financial independence anyway. But a retirement that's a graduation could be a movement in of its own. I don't know if it will, but I'm going to try. It's a different thing. So just to give you a sense, some of you use these things. I use Apple Podcasts because I understand Apple because it was built for mostly junior high schoolers. It's simple technology, and I can figure it out. The rest of this, I don't know. And in fact, now that Spotify has opened up, as soon as Spotify came online, the team we had behind the scenes made sure we were approved and on Spotify. So I didn't even have to know that Spotify existed, much less that it started doing podcasts, much less how to get it there. In much the same way, if you're going to write a book and you need an Amazon page for your book, an author page and all these other things, you don't have to know how to do this. You just have to know the right people to help you do this so that you can do your day job. And what it costs to put all of this together, because I know it sounds like a big deal, but what it cost us in our first year to put all this together is less than the typical revenue from one client. So at the end of the day, it was an amazing investment. Now, could it work for everyone? It's going to work for you if you decide this is important to you. If you work it, it'll work. So now we've gone from the Macintosh to this. Now people, while they're on the treadmill, can listen to why tax planning is more than just filing tax returns. Because why wouldn't you want to hear that? And actually, the interview there was with a guest I had never heard of, but he had been dubbed the funniest tax guy in America. So we had a lot of fun. I'm just glad it stayed clean because it needs to be a clean show. It's very important. All right. So here's a sampling of some of the folks I've interviewed in the last couple of weeks. Amazing folks. Ed he doesn't look it, but he is the funniest tax guy in America. And we talked about some outrageous things and had a lot of fun. Bo Humphreys, I met here at FinCon19. He was one of the first people I talked to who said, you could do this. And we just had a nice chat. Now we've been on each other's shows. You will find that there are probably 1,000 shows in the room. You could be on each other's. That's a great way to do this, and you help each other. But there are best-selling authors here and folks who've been in incredible places that have much larger networks than I do. So in the same way it's good for me to be on a show with a big audience, it's good for me to have a guest on my show that has a bigger audience than my show, which I think has an audience of 300. That doesn't matter. It may be great, but my objective here is not to make money on advertising or sponsorships of my podcast. It's to grow the financial planning business. And if growing the financial planning business means having guests on who push my message out to their networks and they're excited to do it, it's a no-brainer to me. Rather than trying to find these people myself, I can leverage other people's. I mean, Kevin Bacon is 6 degrees. This is now 2. I can get to all these people much, much more easily this way. So I want to shift a little bit. Any questions about any of this so far? I mean, you guys, everyone's sort of right there with me. That's great. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Which have you found of the list that you have of places to put your podcast on have been the most successful and where you get the most downloads or listens?
I have no idea. And it doesn't matter to me. If I was a podcaster for a living and I was trying to sell advertising for my podcast, it would matter a lot. I'm not a podcaster for a living. I'm a financial advisor for a living, and so I have no idea which one. We have the metrics. We have all the data. Somebody somewhere smarter than me with that data is figuring that out. That's not my job. It's not yours either. So I can't answer that. I would think Spotify is going to be good. A lot of people use it, but we'll see. Sir?
So I assume you do most of the guests not in person.
Most are not in person. We do have a studio. It does have seating for guests. We've done a bunch of shows in person. Actually, in some ways, prefer to do shows in person because you can play off one another a little better. But at the end of the day, some of these guests, the best guests you have, aren't going to be local, and they're not flying in for a 20-minute podcast interview. So in the same way I didn't fly to their studios, they're not flying to mine. So yes, we have to have that. And then we rely a little bit on the quality of their, we don't want them on a cell phone. We at least need a landline, maybe a headset. We can use Zoom, we can use WebEx, we can use some of the different methods. And again, I contend that I don't know how all those things work. I just know that when I show up in that studio 5 minutes before the show starts, my screen is ready, the producer's online. All I have to do is put on the headset, do a sound check, and do this. And that makes a difference to me. I would not do it any other way. Sir?
Can you speak at all about the compliance?
Yes, I can. We are investment advisory representatives of a corporate RIA. So we're part of Kestra, which is an IBD and RIA and so forth. Our compliance department has been amazing. Amazing in that they do listen to every show before it goes live. They have never made one request to change anything. There was one show, I think, that they asked for some disclaimer on the show tile. Some of it is knowing what not to say. Not pitching something, not pitching product, and just having a conversation with people. Talking to someone about how they're planning to spend their retirement years is a little different than talking about which stock is likely to pop next month. So if you avoid the same third rails you'd avoid in any other format, I've had no problem with compliance. And most of the time, turnaround's 2-3 days tops. Some of it is, they're giving me the benefit of the doubt because I've been doing some of this long enough. I've done enough live television that they couldn't monitor to know that if they can monitor this, I'm not going to mess that up. Because all I need for them to say is, please don't do any more media appearances. So compliance has been a non-issue for me. Some firms will not like this. Some won't even let you do it. I'm sure they are. As long as our compliance blesses what we're saying, we feel pretty safe. And I don't feel like they're business prevention for us. I feel like they're trying to help us. Our chief compliance officer and I have a great relationship. And I go directly to the top for something like this because ultimately I don't want someone in a cubicle making that decision. So I would say escalate it if it's a problem for you. Yes, ma'am.
Does your compliance department allow you to ask for ratings and reviews?
For the show, yes. In the same way we can ask for testimonials for a book. We can't ask for testimonials for our firm, but you can have a testimonial for something you've produced. So it's a different thing. So no one's allowed to say, I love their firm, they always answer their calls on 2 rings, because that's promising a good investment return. But what you can do is you can put this out and say, hey, somebody please listen to the show and pop up a rating. I mean, the SEC now allows Yelp. If they allow Yelp, at some point, you know, I could go back to the slide with the Macintosh on it, but I can tell you the compliance departments at that time, in late 1990s, said you will never have email. You will never have a website ever in this business. You will never have a website. We can't monitor that. You will never have email. We can't monitor that. Now they've found ways to monitor your text messaging. They know your heart rate, your blood type. They're everywhere. But so no, that hasn't been a problem. Other questions? Okay. So I want to show you, these are the 2 books that I've already written. And going from podcasting to writing, I was an English major, planning on law school, and worked at a major brokerage firm in the legal department when I started my career, and fell in love with the brokerage business and not the legal business. So I didn't go to law school. I wasted a lot of time studying for the LSATs, but didn't go to law school, and thank goodness. So these were the books that I wrote, and I made huge mistakes with them. And I would like to share some of the mistakes. You know, one of our speakers yesterday said, don't say that you made lots of mistakes and now you're perfect. I'm going to try to not make the same mistake twice, but I reserve the right to make all new mistakes and make them grandly. The first book was Debt Free for Life. I had been in a course, a Leadership Maryland course, and I had said, you know, someday I'd really like to write a book, and I'm probably not alone. Anybody here ever written a book? Got a bunch of you. Any planning to or working on? Okay, so you understand. It was something that felt important. It was something you wanted to do. I got a phone call from somebody who said, we'd like to hire you to write a book for us. I thought I was being punked. I was like, where's the camera? But that's actually true. It's what happened. I had been a client referred me to a publisher, and the publisher called and said, we'd like to hire you to write a book for us as part of a series. I thought, what a cool thing. Don't ever do that. What happened in this particular case was, yes, I had a book, and yes, it was produced, but the work didn't belong to me. And while I was paid what became a meaningless sum of money to do this, the work didn't belong to me. And in 2008-09, when the recession hit, the publisher went out of business. The publisher still owns the copyright and will not give it up despite being non-existent. And I no longer have rights to my own work. Don't ever do that. That was a bad thing. So I decided, okay, not messing with that. I'm not going the route of an agent. I'm going to self-publish. So I hired a company online that did self-publishing. I didn't know who I was choosing or what I was doing. It just was the first one that popped up. Google search is never wrong. It's always the first one. And it was good alphabetically, too, actually, as it turns out. And Retire Wealthy was born. Retire Wealthy was written in a way, it was designed to be a play on words, where, again, retirement was being redefined as not retirement. I didn't have the graduation thing at the time, but I had this idea that retirement should be something you move toward, not something you move from. I didn't want it to be a retreat. And wealthy is such a loaded term that I quote great philosophers in this book, like Chris Rock, who once said that if Bill Gates woke up with Oprah's net worth tomorrow, he'd want to jump out a window. And so that's the way we described wealthy. Everything's relative. So I wanted this to be sort of a fun read, and I said, I want this to be a path, and I had no help from this company. I did everything myself, including choose the picture that makes this look biblical. Now, I did not intend for my book to be a road to the light. It's so bad that now when I sign them, because I still use them, I sign them and say the future is bright and my name, because it looks like a religious or here's how you die. You might as well say die wealthy. That's on me, okay? You can't make this stuff up. It gets worse. My next slide, you need to know this because this really happened. There's another Eric D. Brotman who writes books. He's a PhD and has an author page that came up much before mine. So it was so bad that when you first Googled me, his would come up instead of mine. This PhD writes books on how to toilet train cats. That's real. I am not making this up. So I published a book with my own author page. Yeah, it's a great deal. I published a book and put out an author page and was found as the guy who toilet trained cats. You know, at some point you just laugh. I can't tell you how many of these I've received as presents from people who think it's the funniest damn thing. This is a photo book, man. I didn't need to see that. I mean, it should almost be an adult bookstore with some of the stuff he's pictured in that book. But at any rate, you can't control that. If your name is John Smith, there will be other John Smiths. I didn't expect another Eric D. Brotman. There are actually two that I've come across. One writes books on how to toilet train cats, and the other doesn't pay his taxes. And he's local to me, my home state, which is awesome because he's constantly on the docket. You can't make this up. I'm ready to change my name or something. So questions. I saw hands or no, there was coffee. Okay. So I'm not doing this by myself ever again. I have a new book, and I met people here who do this right. Okay, so enter my next new friend from FinCon, Julie, who's here somewhere. I think, there she is. Julie's got a booth here. 2 years ago, I did the pro networking. I sat down with her for 10 minutes. I said, I have this idea. She said, I love this idea. I said, how do we do this? And now the book is with editors, and it's ready to be a real thing. And I couldn't be more excited about it, and I've had help along the way, not only with the content and the organization, but now it'll be the design, the cover. Thank goodness will not look like it's a path to the light. All the marketing and the publicity. The prior firm said, oh, we're going to help you with publicity. The only show of any import that I did was the Mary Lou Henner show. I was on Mary Lou Henner's show, and we talked about taxi mostly. So this is an opportunity for me to work with somebody who really knows what they're doing and to help put out a quality product. I do not expect to make money selling books. We've heard from folks here who are like, oh, I'm going to sell 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 copies. I use the book as an item in all of our new client welcome kits. So when we have a new prospective client, we send out the information they need, the questionnaire we ask them to go through, some information about the firm, and a copy of a signed book. Some of them read it, at least parts of it. Like there's going to be some kind of like quiz or, I tell people when I hand it to them, I want a book report and a diorama. Because my daughter's in 4th grade and she does these shoebox dioramas. You remember those. I want one with my book, just one. At any rate, we use these to drum up business for our financial advisory practice, not to be John Grisham. If it happens to go that lots of people buy it and love it, and I wind up on the New York Times bestseller list, that will be spectacular. That is not the plan. It would be great. Hopefully you'll all buy 1,000 copies each, and then I don't have a problem. The reality is we're not authors. We're not podcasters. We're not YouTubers. We're financial advisors who use YouTube or podcasting or authoring or blogging or all the tools that FinCon brings to the table. Most of the people here, the vast majority, do that for a living. That's not what we do for a living. And we can leverage people who do that, who wake up thinking about it and go to bed thinking about it the way we wake up thinking about our clients or thinking about the markets or thinking about the business. I think a lot of people lose sight. They take on a project like this and they wind up being a podcaster instead of a financial advisor or an author instead of a financial advisor. You will never make as much money selling books or getting advertising on podcasts. I shouldn't say never. There will be the outlier. But most of us are not going to make more money doing those things than we are in our financial planning and wealth management practices. And monetizing that and looking at private equity and finding ways to retire wealthy, quite frankly, from our financial planning practice is different than having a podcast go big. Plus, if you have that, when you leave the day-to-day grind of the financial advisory business, if you have these other things, then you can be a speaker or a consultant or an author or a podcaster. You could do the podcasting full-time once you've exited the financial planning business. You've already got a platform, you've got listenership, You can even stay on as a consultant to your own firm and let them run. I mean, there's things we can do so that our retirement is not an idle one. So this really exists, and the book itself, just to give you a sense, it is a ticket to Retire University, RU, or Retire U, and every chapter is a course. So there's chapters that are Cash Management 101 or Debt Management 101 or Investment Portfolio Management 101, and it goes straight through to things that are about legacy planning and that are much more about life. There's a lot of psychology. I was English and psychology, not finance, so that's what I wrote about. In a context of reaching financial independence. It's different and it's authentic and it's my voice. It's written in the first person. And it's not designed to be a textbook. Don't write a textbook. Yes, ma'am.
When is it coming out?
Julie? April. In time for people who are really irritated about their taxes to say, ooh, I want to read about that. Can't we do Thanksgiving or Christmas? Next year. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
What's your last name, James? Broad.
So, yes, April will be the big,
The smart broad.
the big launch. She is a smart broad. So let's fast forward some more. We already seen a picture, but I went to my second FinCon feeling like I really know this stuff now. Now I'm an expert. What do I want to glean from Orlando? And in Orlando, what I wanted to do was find a way, again, to broaden my message. And so I met folks from Motley Fool and from Forbes and from some of the different brands, because I did the pro thing. And I said, how do I become a content creator for you? They said, oh, there's an application process, and it's actually quite simple. And I went through, and the Motley Fool turned me down, and Forbes said yes. So yay for Forbes, boo for Motley Fool. And this became a content page where now I'm a contributor to Forbes.com. Some of these articles have been read by 10 and 20,000 people, just because it's Forbes.com. Not only will they do that, but if you give them enough content, they'll actually pay you to do it, which is kind of cool. You will not make a lot of money. You should not replace your day job. In fact, we've now decided, I was doing five posts a month, and now we're doing 2. And the reason that we're doing 2 is because it started to pull me away in much the same way I talked about from what we do all day that actually makes us a living and actually grows our clientele. So I got very excited about it, and I took it on in full steam. I'm glad I'm doing it. It's a lot of fun. It creates incredible credibility, and people are seeing it, and people are responding to it, and I'm hearing from prospective clients. I have not monetized that nearly as much as I did with the podcasting. Far more people listen or watch than read. That's just a reality, partly because we're busy, and you can have something on in the background while you're doing other things, whether you're driving or whether you're working or whether you're doing dishes. You can listen to something during that time. It's very difficult to read a blog and give your child a bath at the same time, I find. So now, here we are. We are in DC. It's my 3rd FinCon. Now I'm even more of an expert. No, I'm really not. But what I'd like to do this year, I came with a plan. What I'd like to do is find like-minded financial advisors who want to host a podcast, who are interested in joining a network and building a personal finance podcast network. The reason that I say that is because all of a sudden, if you have 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 hosts, and you're all in the same network, and you're all doing 2 shows a month, which is what we can manage as financial advisors. You're not going to do a show twice a week. It's all you would do. But if you do a show twice a month, and we have all these folks, and it's the same network, and it's the same go-to, and it's the same landing page, then there'll be new content for that network every single day. And you can build listenership. I liken it to when MTV launched. Video Killed the Radio Star was the first video ever. I think I was watching it with the little knob that turned the cable channels, which was better than getting up and pushing the TV, I'll tell you. There were VJs. Those people became celebrities. They're now working for XM Sirius, a lot of them. They've kept their personas from 35 years ago, all because of a network that basically doesn't exist in the same way as it did. So our hosts, between my network and a dozen others, will have a much greater opportunity to land sponsorships or advertising or other things for the network, not for the individual show. And so I can't, yes, sir?
So you want to be Oprah?
No, I do not want to be Oprah. I want to be a financial advisor. I am here to help. I am not here to run. This is an idea that I think has legs, that I think can benefit a lot of people. particularly people who want to invest in this type of program but not to run it. I have no desire to run this. So my desire is to amplify my show and amplify other shows collectively. And for those of us who aren't podcasting full time, it's a way to leverage the technology and to leverage the opportunity. It is not my business. It's not my baby. I don't make a nickel on that other than if my show does better because your show does better and vice versa, then we high five in the hallway. You know, and so my objective this FinCon, other than to speak, which is amazing that I went from not knowing any of this to speaking, which is very, very cool, but this whole idea that that now we can figure out ways to collectively make this work better for lots of us, to me is a win. And it's worth thinking about. It's worth figuring out. And there's people outside of this room who really know how to do this. And there might be people inside this room who know how to do this. I'm not that person. So my objective now is to find like-minded folks who say, yeah, this has legs. Maybe this is a good thing. And maybe this is a way where we can monetize our podcast without being podcasters full time. And it's just a personal finance network that people can join that ideally will be more likely to get subscribers than Don't Retire, Graduate, or any of our other new small shows.